My name's Chris Roybal. I was born and raised in Hernandez. I graduated from the Espanola Valley here, Espanola Valley High School, and then I went down to New Mexico State University, and I got my bachelor's down there in business management. Over the years, I've worked in a lot of economic development here in the valley with our land grant, our local land grant, the Bartolome Sanchez land grant. And it's interesting because my father and grandfather were both on the commission, on the ditch commission, and on the land grant board, and now I find myself doing the same thing. It's something that, you know, I mentioned my Roybal genealogy goes back to the year 1585 in Galicia, Spain. But up to my great-grandfather and even great-great-grandfather in the Espanola Valley, and particularly in Hernandez, we've been irrigators and farmers here for generations. Corn, beans, chili, and then orchards, grapes, and we had the best cherry orchards, and apples, apricots, pears, peaches, you know. And we even when I was a kid back in the 1970s, we'd go to the farmers markets, and a lot of times we'd go up to Taos and Santa Fe and here locally, and we had an abundance of crops. It was a lot of hard work. I joke that my dad broke every labor law in the book when I was a kid, because it was a lot of work, you know. And times have changed, you know. It's hard to get younger people to do the hard work and stick with it from March until September, you know. But there are still a lot of people that are traditional, and they still farm. And of course, a lot of the use of the water as well is for livestock purposes, and again, irrigating and crops and orchards. The Hernandez Community Ditch, we're actually referred to as the San Jose de Hernandez Community Ditch. And it's about, well, it's not about, it's 630 acres. There's 188 irrigators on the Hernandez Community Ditch as of the last couple of years. There was a survey done on it. And it runs from north to south off of US Highway 84-285 runs kind of parallel to the ditch and to the river. So if you're on the highway coming in from Santa Fe or Albuquerque, we're between mile markers 196 and 192. Espanola Valley history: Don Juan de Oñate colonized this area in July 7th. He arrived in Espanola, New Mexico, July 7th, 1598. And I've had this discussion before with the colonists and the law of the Indies, and I've read that the first two things that the colonists did when they arrived in an area to colonize was they built a capilla and they dug a ditch, because it was that important back then, because, you know, you needed to get your crops together during the spring and summer so that you wouldn't, you know, starve to death in the wintertime. And so within at least 2 years, or from the 1598 period, because our priority date for this ditch is the year 1600, which was kind of established by the state. The three senior ditches, the Hernandez Community Ditch, the Chamita Ditch, and the Salazar Ditch, all have the priority date of the year 1600. But you can imagine that it's been farmed in the same general area for all those years, 423 years right now. Well, from what I understand, in 1907, and this was just prior to statehood, because New Mexico became a state in 1907, and there was a code that was established at that time. Well, you would imagine that the areas that were more populous at the time, and again, this particular area was more so than further up in Abiquiu and Chama at that time. So what had always been done was, it was kind of like the, again, the priority dates are important because that establishes who was in the area first, and you know, in times of shortage, who's going to have priority to the water. So those priority dates are important to the areas here. But, you know, by the same token, even when we started here about 8 years ago on this commission myself, what I thought was interesting was that, you know, everybody's like afraid that somebody's going to make a priority call and it's going to wind up in court. And when we were approached, I thought what was interesting was that the state kind of came to us, the state engineer's office, and it kind of kicked in automatically, like almost administratively. And they came and talked to the senior ditches and said, look, the water flow at the particular gauge is called La Puente, it's up north. If that falls below a certain marker, then it'll automatically go into priority administration. That's what I thought was interesting, because I thought, well, there's almost like not a need to file a priority call, because the state's kind of arranging it so that at least even the junior ditches will get some share of the water. And the senior ditches, we were approached, the three of us, and we all agreed at the time, look, we're all in this together. We're all suffering right now or whatever with the drier years that we've had in the past 20 years, probably since the turn of the century. And so we decided to just, set up a rotation and share the water rather than do a priority call, because the guy from the state engineers at the time said, if you did a priority call, you guys, your one ditch, well, the three main senior ditches would get all of the water from here to the state line in Colorado, and nobody else would get anything. And the way we looked at it was, well, we're all suffering right now, and I mean, what would be the purpose to try to hog up a small amount of water that's in the river in the first place? To just share what we have, And that's been a long-standing kind of arrangement in northern New Mexico, and it's not like that in different parts of the country, My dad always, he was in World War II, and when he came back, the thing that really changed the environment around here, because we were always agrarian, and I even have uncles on my mom's side of the family who, I have relatives in Oakland right now, because my mom always said, well, my brothers went out there before World War II because there wasn't any jobs in the area. So they went to go and work on the docks and on the shipyards over there, because that's where the jobs were at. And my dad said, he goes, yeah, when I came back from World War II, what really changed things here in northern New Mexico was the Manhattan Project, quite frankly, because that offered a lot of good paying jobs, and it changed the way people, it kind of changed our lifestyle in the area. And but prior to that, like I say, even in the modern area, let's say 150 years after the ditches got going here, after 1598, let's say in the middle 1700s, if your crops failed, let's say there was a hailstorm, after you worked on them from March or April till September, and there was a hailstorm and it decimated your crops, you were in danger of starving to death, But what I've noticed even now in the 21st century and in the 1980s and 90s when I was younger, like say for instance Abiquiu up the road, they might get a freeze, but Hernandez doesn't, and our trees have our apples and everything else. So you go to your farmers markets and you do trades. I can envision that back in those days, the people down here helped out the people up there, or vice versa, when their crops failed, because a lot of us are related also, so we're just kind of helping each other out, instead of it being like antagonistic. That's the way I look at it, and based on even oral history that my own family has told me, Wet years versus dry years. If there's a curtailment or of any sort this year in 2023, something's broken with this system, because we just went through flooding in Colorado, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and California. I mean, it was all over the television and everything. The first year that I did this, I thought to myself, because when curtailment kicks in and we're only able to run our ditches at 50%, it kills us, because I cannot get water to the south end of our ditch, at 50%. So those people down there, their crops fail. They have to tank in water to their animals. And it was like the second year that I was on the commission, we had a dry year. The first year wasn't bad. And it frustrated me. I could probably use some more choice words about that, because we were running at 50%. We couldn't get water to the south end of our ditch, but I went over to our diversion and there was guys on kayaks in the ditch, So they were using it for recreation, but we couldn't even get water to our people where it needs to get, So I think sometimes we gotta employ and emphasize common sense as well, you know what I mean? Not just the acequia commissions and the state and everybody, and the tribes and everyone else. It's a precious resource. We're in the high desert. It's not a wrathy area like in down south and where the water tables are high and stuff. So we can't be wasteful with the water, and sometimes people aren't happy when there's curtailment. Even the senior ditches, it's hard. When we're cut in half of our flow, people on the south end of our ditch suffer, kicks all that off again is the moisture. Is how much water we have in the ditch to begin with. Because just to explain this, the reservoirs like Abiquiu and El Vado and Heron up north, it doesn't really help us because we don't have storage there, and we only get to use the native flow, which is usually runoff and snowpack and rainfall. There's other water rights settlements going on right now that hopefully is going to change that. We're all cautiously optimistic about that purchasing storage water rights and then being able to use it when it's needed would be ideal. And I do debate, I guess you could say, with people in my area, because I had the experience of going to school down south in Las Cruces. And the Rio Chama is probably the major tributary of the Rio Grande. We provide a lot of water because and it's the Rio Grande that they use down there in Las Cruces and Socorro and Hatch, and they have chili farms down there, they have pecan orchards, and that's what I tell the people from around here. They need the water down there too, and that is desert country down there. We're a lot more lush and green and mountainous in the northern part of the state. But that's why when I kind of came into this on the commission and stuff, I thought to myself, I think it's just the right thing to do to share the water when in shortage times, You're not going to satisfy everybody, but and again, a lot of it just has to do with rainfall. This is a kind of a bit of an anomalous year, but a good year because we had a real late snowpack and we had a long runoff. I mean, we hadn't seen water flowing through the river like this in decades, but it was a good year, I haven't really had a chance to talk to everybody, and there's been a good flow in the ditch. So I just got a bunch of calls this week from a guy at the very end of the ditch because he had he had seeded some new alfalfa, and the water level was real low. But that was because there was some changes that happened at Abiquiu and the releases up there. But even last year, and that was pretty much done because of storage water that had been acquired, that we had purchased, the Rio Chama Acequia Association, the RCAA, and that really bails us out during dry years or whatever, is when we can release a little bit more water, even if it only lasts 2.5 weeks, believe it or not. During harvest time for corn and chili and stuff in third week of August, it's critical to have that to have our full flow in the ditches at that time. So, but last year I had some comments from one of my board members in this group, and he said, "You're getting us a lot of good water this year, Chris." And I said, "Yeah, they're allowing us to run real well." That was in 2022, and right now it's still a little bit too early. But in the next 6 to 7 weeks, it's going to be critical that we have a good flow again for harvest time. Once it hits that benchmark in La Puente, and if curtailment is going to be implemented, we meet with to set up schedules or rotation schedules, and it's hard because again, and it's not just the senior ditches; it's all the ditches. The people on the south end, the furthest from the diversion, are going to have a hard time even just getting water to their property. I mean, that's just a fact, So. Yeah, and things are tough all over when that happens. It's not just the junior ditches, the senior ditches as well. Like I mentioned, you cannot get water to our south end on the Hernandez ditch, about 4.4 miles away from the diversion at 50% flow. It just you can't do it. It's physics or whatever, So, we've had people taking tanks of water to their cattle, to their livestock, in years like that, and a lot of times their crops fail, and they're not happy. They are not happy at the time. I'm fortunate. I told everybody when I got on this commission, I said, I live pretty close to our diversion in the part of the community that I live in. I'm never going to have shortage problems because I'm close to our diversion. But I said, my goal being on this commission is fighting for the people on the south end and trying to get you guys water, in drought times and in dry years. The pain is shared as well, not just the benefit of sharing the water, that's a fact. For me, it would be hard to sleep at night or whatever if we completely shut down the junior ditches and just wipe them all out for even one season, you know what I mean? That could be devastating to just the amount of effort people put into their crops and their trees and their livestock, Yeah, it's not necessarily at all to the senior ditch's benefit to be sharing the water, but again, the pain and the benefit is shared by both the junior and senior ditches. In my experience, it's hard to get young people to come out and help out. That's a bummer, because you wear a lot of different hats when you're on the commission. Instead of just sitting at a meeting and coordinating a meeting and setting up all the logistics for that, then you also find yourself out there when we have a flood. You can go from one extreme to the other in the same season this has happened to us multiple times in the last 5 years, where it's bone dry from January until June, and there's very little water in the river, and then the monsoons come and the arroyos run and they wash out the ditch. So then we find ourselves hiring backhoes and tree cutters and everybody else to just get in there. And if the water's not running for a week and a half, because just to get the machinery out there, then we have the people calling us saying, why isn't there water in the ditch? Again, during shortage sharing and drought times, I guess people that feel like we're entitled to the water or whatever, you have a lot of unhappy people, And we just try to. I was pleased with the schedule that I saw it on a website there, the schedule that the state had implemented, because the senior ditches had 4 days. And it was on the weekend. It was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And when the new schedule came out, the current schedule, we lost a day. We only have 3 days now. And myself on the Hernandez ditch and one of the commissioners from the Salazar ditch said, what happened? Why did that schedule change? That schedule is not being set up by the state engineer's office right now. And to be perfectly honest with you, I preferred the old schedule rather than the new one. And the big deal that I made about that at the time, the other change they had made, the Rio Chama Acequia Association had made, was that we were going to get the water like on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And I said, no. We already lost 1 day. I'd rather have it on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, because people are off work on the weekends, and that's when they have a chance to irrigate. So that change was made to accommodate us, but I was happier with the previous schedule. So we're not always happy about things all the time. It's not all, an expression. It's not all roses all the time or whatever, but it still works. To think that irrigation has gone on in this same location since the year 1600, maybe even a couple years prior to that. I know how difficult it is to farm chili and corn and our orchards and everything else. I think I take a great deal of pride to know that that's been our subsistence here for so long. In the next 100 years, and well, that's why a lot of these new arrangements are trying to be worked out, because we're trying to forecast for the next 100 years. I have no idea what our vehicles are going to be like in 100 years, 200 years. But this is the bare, rock bottom thing that everybody has done, since hunter-gatherers to farmers. You know what I mean? So I figure that farming is going to go on. You know what I mean? That's never going to stop to some extent. And I even enjoyed going to the farmers markets. They still exist now, and I prefer to buy fresh fruit than supermarket stuff, It's funny, the first time I heard the term, everything that we have here at the farmers market is organic, because when I was a kid, I used to say everything that we have here is homegrown. That was the term that we used. But I think farming is going to be around for a long, long time to come. The water rights issues and all that, to a certain extent, the adjudication of those they may not be set in stone, but I think they're working to everybody's satisfaction at the present time. My opinion is that I think the acequias have operated here in northern New Mexico for centuries prior to statehood. And I think we've been good water managers of the water for all that time, even prior to the new regulations and standards and everything that have been implemented. I mean, if you look between 1598 and 1912, I think that's about 314 years. Right now, the way I look at it, I think the current commissioners and stuff, we're the stewards of the water right now. And the whole thing that I think the tribes and the state and the acequias right now, especially because of the drier climate in the high desert, is we don't want to waste the water, you know, and the whole term beneficial use is trying to account for and make good use of every drop of water that's coming down that we're lucky to have, you know. Again, I'm optimistic about how things are going to work out in the next, I'm looking at it more in the next 30 to 50 years. But I think it's gonna be the term wet water. You know, we need wet water, you know, coming off of the river into the ditches and out into the fields where we need it.